What to grow in June, my unmissable list of only 5 plants that I think you absolutely have to grow. I've done the hard work for you, sifting through the lists of seeds, the lists of plants to really get 5 super things so that you'll have colour and interest in your garden, tasty things to eat, and some lovely investment pieces to help you build your garden over time. Hey everyone, how's it going and welcome back. On today's episode of Niall Gardens, it's a what to grow video with my 5 top things that I think you need to be growing. And I know that it's so easy to get overwhelmed when you look at all of the different possibilities. So by giving you what is essentially like a capsule wardrobe of plants, my hope is that if you follow along month by month, you'll easily build up a really nice collection that's going to give you a really diverse garden, something that's going to give you nice flowers and interesting things to look at, tasty edibles, and also help to really just mature your garden and help wildlife and biodiversity. Let's talk now about one of my all-time favourite plants. Truly, it is one of my all-time faves. It's not expensive, it's not rare, and I'm pretty certain that you're going to have certainly heard of it. And it's chives, something really basic, but something really brilliant. I have so many chive plants in the garden, and here's why I think you need to have them too. For starters, they're really easy to get hold of and they're really affordable, whether you buy them as plants or as seed. When it comes to plants, have a look in the garden centre in the herb section and you're going to find them. When it comes to seeds, you actually have plenty of choice. You can get regular chives, which will have that regular onion flavour, or if you want something a little bit different, you can opt for garlic chives instead that have that extra little bit of garlicky flavour to them. What I love about it is if you buy a chive plant as a plant, you can just plonk it in the soil in pretty much any conditions and they're going to thrive. If you want to grow them from seed, they're so easy to get started when it comes to germination. As you can see, I have lots here. In fact, look, I have clumps of chives planted all along the edge of each of my raised beds in the centre of the vegetable garden at the bottom of the black arches. I think it just looks really nice. When it comes to flavour, these are gorgeous. You can pick as much or as little as you want, chop them up and add them either into cooked dishes or into fresh. And what I like about adding them into fresh dishes is that although they're oniony, they don't have that really harsh bite that a white onion or actually even a red onion has, so they're brilliant for salads. You can cut them back as hard as you want when you're harvesting. Cut them right back to the base and they're going to regrow again. They're perennial, so they're going to come back year after year. What you will find is at the end of the year, they're going to die off, you'll think they're gone, but then early in the season, if you keep a lookout, you'll see little green shoots starting to poke up and you know that they're coming back. But as well as being good from a culinary point of view in terms of the leaves, just look at the flowers, and that's why I'm recommending them for this month. They're covered with these perfect little purple allium flowers, just like any other allium, but in miniature. They're really good for pollinators. I don't know if you can see at the moment, but there are loads of bees on all of my chive plants. So you're helping to contribute towards biodiversity and the wellness of your garden and the wildlife in the garden. And the flowers are edible as well. You can pick them apart into all these tiny little bits to scatter into salads to make them feel really special. Or you can even pick the heads and add the heads into oils and vinegars, soak them for a long time with that lovely oniony flavour and diffuse it all the way through the oil or the vinegar. They're brilliant. A really versatile plant. It's perennial. It's going to come back year after year. And isn't it beautiful? The next recommendation of something great to grow in June isn't going to be coming from me. It's going to be coming from a massively experienced organic grower, someone that has really pushed the no-dig gardening movement, and I think you're going to know him. It's Charles Dowding.
During June, there are many sowing options for vegetables, ones that grow in half a season. In fact, one is almost spoilt for choice. And beetroot is one of my favourites because it's a banker, I find. So you sow it in June, depending where you are a bit, how warm your summer and autumn are, you could sow as late as the first week of July. But June is generally the month for it, and if you sow earlier in June, they have time to get bigger. In particular, this variety is one I've not grown for a few years for one reason or another, but I'm having another go this year. It's called Cheltenham Green Top. It's an old-fashioned beetroot, and I sow them by transplanting. So I've filled a module tray here with normal potting compost, not a special seed compost, just normal potting compost. Has a good supply of nutrients, and within about 3 weeks, these multi-sown seedlings will be big enough to transplant. So say you sow them early June, you can be transplanting them late June after maybe peas or broad beans, so there's lots of succession options with this plant. And as with all beetroot, this one particularly, interestingly, has really large seeds, and that's a feature of many beetroot, that they come in clusters. I'm actually going to put only 2 seeds, although I'm multi-sowing, because I'm pretty sure that with these I could easily get 4 plants from 2 seeds. And the feature of this variety, Cheltenham Green Top, the clue is in its name. It has green leaves. They're still slightly beetroot colour, not as red as normal beetroot, and particularly good for eating. So the leaves are extra tasty, and so actually is the root. I'm not too sure why it's become sort of fallen out of favour a bit, but the root grows quite long, and so it doesn't sit on the ground like a normal round beetroot, and that actually gives it a little bit of frost protection, because when anything in the soil freezes less than something sitting above the soil. So I'm going to plant these late June and harvest them sometime probably in December, could store them over winter. And in flavour terms, this one is actually pretty sweet, so have a go. June Cheltenham Green Top.
That's a really cool recommendation, and it's definitely something that I'm going to be growing this month, and I really do think that you should too. Thanks so much, Charles. I really love your suggestion. If you don't already know Charles, and I would fully expect for some reason that you probably will already, if you don't know, head across to Charles's YouTube channel. I'll link it up here. Make sure to watch his videos, subscribe, and give him your support. His information is just really extensive and so accurate and usable. Thanks, Charles. In each of these monthly videos, I recommend 5 things for you to grow to keep everything simple, but you know that I like to break the rules. So for this recommendation, I'm not talking about one type of plant, I'm going to talk about a group of plants, because now is the time to really be thinking about growing them if you're going to be growing them from seed, and it's biennials. If you're not familiar with the difference between an annual, a biennial and a perennial, here's the really quick catch up. An annual, something like calendula or cosmos or cornflowers, are plants that grow from seed, flower and die in 1 year. A biennial is a plant that essentially has a 2-year life cycle. You'll sow it now, it'll grow and put on leaves, strengthening up this year so that next year it's ready to flower, but once it flowers, it dies. And then a perennial is a plant that comes back year after year. So when it comes to biennials, you want to be starting them now so that they have time to grow to give you the flowers that you want next year. And my top tips of biennials to start: foxgloves. They are just brilliant. I use them here in the garden because they give that woodland edge feel. They bring colour, they bring height, and actually they bring a bit of drama into the garden. I'll happily use them all the time. Health warning though, they are poisonous. Every bit of them is poisonous, so know that before you start to grow them. As well as that, you can grow lunaria, which is known as honesty, and you would really grow that not only for its magenta flowers, but also for its really flat, papery, moon-like seed heads. They're stunning. They look amazing on the plant, and then you can cut them and you can dry them. Or if you want a really good plant to fill your containers through the winter, really your containers that would have bulbs in them, go for wallflowers. sow them now, plant those baby plants later in the season into your containers once you've got your bulbs in. They're going to stay nice and green through the winter, giving you just that little bit of life in your pots. Then they're going to flower, and they come in so many lovely colours. Really rich reds, oranges and yellows are the most common ones. So get those sown now, prick them out once they're just little baby plants, grow them on, and you're going to have great biennial success next year. For me, magic happens in the garden when you grow a real mix of things, not just flowers but also edibles, and you get that lovely tapestry of both. So for my next recommendation, it's over to Liz Zorab at By Their Farm.
In the heat of this lovely summer sunshine, seems a bit of an odd time to be talking about winter squashes. These are they include pumpkins and many other different types of squash, and if you cure them and store them properly, the skins are hard and you can store them for about a year or so. The first couple of weeks in June is an ideal time to be sowing seeds for your winter squashes. They're quite big seeds, so they're fairly easy to handle. And when you sow them standing on an end like this rather than flat. If you sow them flat, there's much more chance of them rotting. So recommendation is that you sow 2 seeds in a 9cm pot, that's 3 inches, and that when they grow, you weed out the weaker one. Well, I'm not very good at that, and I tend to keep them all, and so I will separate them out, but then the one that I've taken out I'll also pot up as well, which means that I end up with a huge number of squash seedlings. For me, that's great because we really like to have squashes stored. And if you don't want to go through all the fuss of growing things in pots and then planting them out, you can put the seeds straight into the ground. Make sure again that you've got good rich soil for them to grow in, and they should be very happy. Alternatively, you can buy plants in garden centres and plant nurseries, and you should be able to get some choice of different types of squashes, particularly things like pumpkins and butternut squash, but probably not as wide a range as if you were growing from seed yourself. Now, these plants will get really big, and they will take up a large amount of space, and they're really good for using as ground cover. But if your space is confined, you can still grow them. Put several canes either into a tripod or a teepee shape, secure them, push them well into the ground to secure them at the top, and then wind your plant around it as it grows. They grow tendrils that look like springs, and they'll cling on to the supports, and it will grow upwards. Now, squashes are hungry and thirsty plants, so they really like lots of well-rotted manure beneath them or around them when you plant them, and they like copious amounts of water. They've got very big leaves, so in this warmth there's going to be a lot of evaporation, and so you'll need to keep an eye on them. Having said that, if we have a very cold, wet patch, they will sulk a little bit, but as soon as it warms up again, they'll grow away. The squashes will be ready to harvest in the autumn, before the first frosts, but you can leave them on the vine for really quite a long time. And you'll know when they're ready to harvest because the stem here will start going brown. It will change from green to brown, and when you harvest them, don't cut it off really close. Leave the bit that's attached to the squash as well as a couple of inches of stem each side of it, which means that when that shrinks back, it won't be shrinking back into your squash. It'll give it plenty of die back and shrink back space, and you'll still have a squash that you can store. I can't really sing the praises of squash plants enough. They're architectural, they're decorative, they're interesting. They hide their fruits underneath them so that when you come to harvest them in the autumn, you're searching around for them, and it's really good fun to suddenly discover you've got another squash. I really think if you have any space in your garden at all, it's really worth considering them.
I love the idea of growing squashes. 100% honesty, I tried to grow butternut squash a couple of years ago and completely failed miserably. But this year I am going to give it another go. I've got some really nice varieties of seed that I'm going to try, and because I haven't got them started yet, I'm going to get mine going right now, and hopefully I'm going to have just as much success as Liz does. Thanks, Liz, for your recommendations. If you don't already know Liz, head across to her YouTube channel. I'll link it up above. Make sure to subscribe, watch her videos. Her knowledge is just brilliant. We've talked about edibles, we've talked about ornamentals, and some of the plants are a bit of both. And for my very last June recommendation, I want to recommend something that is a little bit of an investment piece. These are plants that I talk about every month that either you're going to have to go out and buy realistically, they're going to cost you a little bit of money, or if you have a very kind friend or relative, they might divide one of their plants for you and give you a bit of it. And it has to be these, which are irises. Just look at how bold these look, both in shape and form and also in their colour. They're a really wide-ranging, really diverse group of plants. You can get everything from these kind of irises, which clump up and they really like a big, hot baking in the summer sun, so that their rhizomes will build up and strengthen so that you get this really lovely flower display each year, all the way through to irises that are quite happily living in aquatic conditions, in marginal conditions. Either way, irises are going to give you a super interesting looking flower. Like, check out this one. This is Langport Wren, a really beautiful variety. And you can see that I've got lots of clumps all the way through here at the back of the garden. They're these really dark, almost black purple flowers that when you just look inside, they blush through to a kind of yellowy orange colour. A bit like a tulip, they are so delicate looking. And it is worth noting that the flowers are really fleeting. You're only going to get a day or two out of each flower. But once the plants have settled in, you can see quite how productive they are. On this plant alone, we've got flowers that have already passed, we've got flowers that are in their absolute prime, and as well as that, we've got loads more buds coming. Each of these little clumps is going to give dozens of flowers once it's settled. Like I said, this is something that you're going to want to go out and buy, or better yet, find a very good friend or a very good relative that's willing to divide up their own clumps and share them with you. It's a really lovely way to introduce them into the garden. They're going to add a really nice structural form with this strappy leaf shape and these beautiful flowers. Get them into your garden, incorporate them amongst the plants that you already have, or use them as the basis for a new planting scheme, and you are not going to be disappointed. Trust me, I have them and I adore them. 5 brilliant plants to grow in June. I really hope that you enjoyed the recommendations. Let me know in the comments down below whether you're going to be growing some or all of them, or if you're going to be growing none of them. Let's have a chat and we'll compare notes. And remember, all of my recommendations are based off an Irish climate, but if your climate is a little bit warmer than ours and you're ahead, why not have a look at this video? Or equally, if you're going to be that little bit further behind because you're in a cooler climate, check out this video because each of them are going to apply really nicely for your conditions. And until next time, see you later.